All right, I'm glad we're ready to start creating a console Lambda function. To do that, we'll first go through and type in Lambda, and that brings us this option of run code without thinking about servers. The Lambda console comes forward, and you can see from the left here there's a dashboard, there's applications, there's functions, and there's layers. And really the takeaway here is that you can decide what level of abstraction you want to do. To just get started, it's best to start with functions, because you can just create a Lambda function and experiment with it without having to get into like a layer or an application or something more involved. So we're going to create this function here. And once I click that create function, there's a few different options. So one, I can basically start from scratch and build a Lambda function. Option two is I could go through here and I could use a blueprint. Let's go ahead and look at that real quick. So if I go to blueprints, you can see that it actually toggles by the runtime. So that's one way to do it. So if, let's say I want to look at all Python 3.7 blueprints, you can see there's options here where I can piggyback on some source code that someone else wrote, like getting an object from S3 or DynamoDB process a stream, do a microservice, or have a CloudWatch alarm to Slack. So we have actually some examples here that are great that really bootstrap you and let you get started with creating Lambdas. Another thing that's interesting is you can also browse the serverless app repository. And if you go through here and you look at some of these options, they're much more sophisticated. So, have an Alexa skill, or go through and do something with MySQL. And these are community projects, and you can look through those community projects, deploy that project, and that's also a great way to learn the Lambda ecosystem. We're going to again go back to author from scratch, and if I scroll through here, I can say hello world, and now I have the option of choosing which runtime. The Lambda runtime supports many different languages. Here's an example. This is Node version 10, or Python 3.7, Java 8, Go, also .NET. These are all options to do Lambda functions. We're going to choose Python 3.7, and then the only other thing you'd need to do is choose or create an execution role. We're not going to do anything with permissions, so I'm going to leave that alone. Go ahead and create a function. And now to go through and say hello world and build something very trivial, it'll open us up into the console, and that's actually a full development environment that allows us to write Python code that is executed in the Lambda environment. So here we go. I'm ready to begin, and what's been created for me is a layer. Inside there's a hello world function, and also there's a CloudWatch logs interface, and this allows me to look at my logs in real time. So I'm going to scroll down here to where the function code is sorted, and I can actually say edit code in line, and I can also toggle the runtime here. So I'm going to go through here and edit this template that they give me. So you can see at the very beginning the JSON library is imported. JSON is used for processing JSON data structures. In this example, if I wanted to add something, I could replace this with a string that does something useful in Python. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and print an F string here that says, this is my hello. And then I can actually capture the event that's processed. All Lambda function, this is important to know, have both an event and a context. The context is metadata about where that Lambda function was executed, so that's a great way to inspect that. And the event is whoever has called that Lambda function, they'll pass in an event. So depending on what the service is, if it's, let's say, SQS or SNS or some other service in AWS, that event will be, the payload will be a little different. In the case of the console like this, it's whatever event we decide, and we're going to basically give it a really simple payload, which is a JSON payload, and that payload is actually going to be printed out when we call the Lambda function. So here we go. You can see there's a print statement. I'm going to say save, and then that actually saves my Lambda inside of AWS. Next, I'm going to select test, and when I click test here, I can go through and I can say, here's my hello test payload, and you can see they give you some key values to play around with. I'm going to change this and say hello, and then I'm going to say world here for the payload. And then I can get rid of those other keys. I don't need them. And so now you can see that I have a very basic JSON data structure that has hello as a key and world as a value. And if I save that, now I can reuse that test payload over and over again. So again, this is where the event is going to get put into my function, and then it's going to print out the statement. If I click on test, it then goes through and it calls my Lambda function, and I can look at the execution results. So you can see that the response that was returned back was what we expect. It's a status code of 200. And then in the logs, you can see that this is my print statement, and actually it was able to capture that event and actually print that out. And what's really powerful about this Hello World concept, and again, this is really the piece of work we did, it's one line, is I can also scroll and look at my log files. So if I click on this icon here, I can go into Amazon CloudWatch logs, and actually it will allow me to view all of those different payloads as well. So I'm going to go to monitoring, view in CloudWatch logs, and then that same print statement that showed up in the console, it now shows up in the CloudWatch logs, and I can verify that, yes, here's my Lambda function, and I'm able to actually print out a Hello World.